Hey guys, and welcome to our story for tonight. Picture yourself standing on a cobblestone street, the air thick with the smell of wood smoke, damp earth, and something else. Something metallic and sharp, like the tang of a distant lightning storm. The year is somewhere in the early 1500s. Above you, the stars aren't just points of light. They are a complex celestial machine, a map of destiny that the wise can read, and perhaps even influence. This is a world where magic is not a fantasy, but a science, a dangerous, whispered science that hums just beneath the surface of everyday life. The line between a prayer and a spell is perilously thin, and the shadows in the alleyways seem to stretch and twist with a life of their own. You feel a strange sense of both wonder and unease, a feeling that great power and great peril are two sides of the same tarnished coin. Let's be honest, given the state of medicine, hygiene, and the general tendency for brilliant ideas to be mistaken for heresy, you probably wouldn't survive this. The world we are about to enter is beautiful, but it is not kind. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what we do here. It truly helps the channel. Go ahead and post where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see where our stories are landing. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some gentle, ambient hum, and let's settle in for our journey tonight. You find yourself in an age where the world feels both ancient and new, a time of rebirth we now call the Renaissance. It's a period of explosive creativity and intellectual curiosity, but it's also deeply steeped in traditions that stretch back into the mists of time. You walk past a market stall where a vendor is selling mandrake roots, their gnarled, vaguely human shapes promising everything from fertility to fortune. Nearby, an alchemist's shop billows green-tinged smoke, carrying the acrid scent of sulfur and ambition. This isn't fringe stuff. This is the world. People believe in the doctrine of signatures, the idea that God marked everything in creation with a clue to its purpose. A plant with heart-shaped leaves must be good for the heart. A stone that resembles an eye can cure blindness. It's a beautifully intuitive, if medically questionable, system. You can imagine someone trying to sell you on a new miracle cure that involves rubbing a particularly round rock on your head to cure a headache. And honestly, after a long day, you might just try it. The very air you breathe is different. It's a world without the constant, low-frequency hum of electricity. The quiet is deeper, the darkness more profound. When the sun goes down, the world is lit by the flickering, unreliable glow of candles and hearth fires, which makes every shadow dance and every corner a potential hiding place for something unknown. In this atmosphere, belief in the supernatural is not a choice. It is a fundamental aspect of reality. Curses are as real as the plague, and blessings are sought with the same fervor as a good meal. Historians still debate the extent to which the average person engaged in complex ritual magic versus the highly educated and often wealthy elite who had access to forbidden books and rare ingredients. Was your local baker secretly drawing protective sigils in the flour? Or was this kind of high-minded sorcery reserved for scholars in their locked towers? The truth, as always, is likely somewhere in the messy middle. The local farmer might nail a horseshoe over his door, for luck a simple act of folk magic, while a nobleman might pay a fortune for a meticulously crafted astrological chart to determine the best day for a battle. It is in this intoxicating, dangerous brew of science, faith, and superstition that our story begins. You are a silent observer, a ghost of the future drifting through the past, and you are about to witness the birth of an object so powerful and so feared that its legend will echo for 500 years. You see, in this era, people don't just want to understand the universe. They want to bargain with it. They want to harness its power, bend its rules, and write their own destinies in the stars. And for that, you need more than just knowledge. You need a tool, an artifact, a key to unlock the hidden machinery of the cosmos. As you turn a corner, The scent of rain-washed stone and old parchment fills the air. You're drawn towards a tall, narrow house, its windows glowing with a single steady light against the deepening twilight. It is the home of a man who believes he can do just that. A man who is about to create a masterpiece, and in doing so, sign his own death warrant and unleash a legacy of misfortune upon the world. The light in that window is not just a candle. It is the spark of an idea so potent it will burn through centuries, leaving a trail of ruin in its wake. You take a breath, the cool night air steadying you, and you step closer, drawn into the orbit of a legend in the making. That single glowing window belongs to a man named Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa. As you phase through the solid oak of the door, a neat trick you've picked up in these nightly travels, you find yourself in a room that is part library, part laboratory, and part sanctuary. The air is heavy with the smell of melting beeswax, aging paper, and the faint, clean scent of ozone, as if a small bolt of lightning was recently uncorked in here. Your eyes adjust to the clutter. Books are everywhere, stacked on shelves, piled on the floor, splayed open on a massive central table. They are written in Latin, Greek, Hebrew, and languages you don't even recognize. Their pages filled with intricate diagrams of the cosmos, anatomical sketches, and dense blocks of text. This is the mind of the Renaissance man made manifest. A chaotic, brilliant, all-encompassing quest for knowledge. And at the center of it all is Agrippa himself. He isn't what you might expect. No pointy hat, no long, flowing white beard. He's a man in his prime, intense and wiry, with eyes that seem to burn with a restless fire. He is a true polymath, a type of person that our modern age of specialization has largely forgotten. Agrippa was a physician, a lawyer, a soldier, a theologian, and an occult philosopher. Imagine trying to fit all of that onto a modern LinkedIn profile. The algorithm would probably just crash. He has served in the army of the Holy Roman Emperor, lectured at universities across Europe, and engaged in fiery public debates with the most powerful figures of the church. He is, by any measure, a genius. But his brilliance is of a dangerous kind. He isn't content with the accepted truths of his time. He seeks the Prisca Theologia, the ancient theology, a single, universal wisdom that he believes underlies all religions and philosophies, from the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus to the Jewish Kabbalah and the Christian Gospels. He believes that humanity has lost its connection to the divine, and that this connection can be restored through a synthesis of magic, science, and faith. His most famous work, De Occulta Philosophia Libri Tres, 3 books concerning occult philosophy, is likely open on the table in front of you. It's a comprehensive encyclopedia of Renaissance magic, covering everything from the properties of herbs and stones to the methods for invoking angels and demons. This book made him both famous and infamous. To some, he was a beacon of new learning. To others, he was a heretic of the highest order, consorting with dark forces. You see him tracing a diagram with his finger, a complex pattern of interlocking circles and Hebrew letters. He mutters to himself, a low, constant stream of calculations and incantations. He is attempting to distill the vast, chaotic power of the universe into a single, tangible object. A focus, a talisman of immense power. There's a strange, trivial detail that history remembers about this towering intellectual figure. Agrippa was almost always accompanied by his dog, a large black poodle named Monsieur. And people talked, a lot. Rumors swirled that Monsieur was no ordinary dog, but a familiar spirit, a demon given to Agrippa by the devil himself. It was said that the dog sometimes whispered advice in its master's ear, and that its collar was inscribed with magical symbols. It's a wonderfully weird piece of historical gossip. As you watch Agrippa work, you glance around the room. Sure enough, curled by the fire is a large, shaggy black dog, its eyes gleaming in the firelight. It seems to be watching its master with an unnerving intelligence. Is it just a loyal pet or something more? The line is blurry here. Historians still debate whether Agrippa was a true believer, a genuine magician practicing the arts he wrote about, or if he was a profound skeptic using the language of occultism as a clever, allegorical shell to explore controversial ideas about philosophy, science, and faith without being immediately burned at the stake. Was he trying to summon angels, or was he writing a coded critique of theological dogma? The answer is locked behind those intense, burning eyes. Tonight, however, the debate seems moot. The focus in this room is palpable. He is not writing theory. He is preparing for practice. He consults an astrological chart, a beautiful hand-drawn map of the heavens, noting the position of the moon and the planets. He selects a piece of pure, gleaming silver from a velvet-lined box. Everything must be perfect. The timing, the materials, the intent. This is not a game. To him, this is the most important work a human can undertake. Reaching out to touch the face of God, or at least the intricate machinery that makes the cosmos turn. He is a man standing on a knife's edge between the medieval world and the modern one, a foot in both. He is a reminder that the age of reason didn't just appear overnight. It was born from this fervent, often strange, and deeply magical quest to understand everything. You watch him for a moment longer, a man wrestling with the biggest questions imaginable, all alone in a room filled with the ghosts of ancient thinkers, with only his possibly demonic poodle for company. It's a lonely business, being a genius. Now your attention is drawn to the object at the heart of this entire endeavor. It is not yet the legendary amulet, but a simple, unadorned disc of silver resting on a piece of black silk. It seems to drink the candlelight, glowing with a soft, internal luminescence. This isn't just any silver. Agrippa, a master of what we would now call material science, mixed with esoteric belief, chose it for its deep, ancient connection to the moon. In the alchemical and astrological traditions that formed the bedrock of his work, every celestial body was linked to a metal. Gold was the sun-perfect, masculine, royal. Iron was Mars warlike, aggressive. And silver was the moon, feminine, intuitive, psychic, and deeply connected to the tides, both of the oceans and of the human mind. A mainstream historical fact of the era is that these metallic correspondences were not just poetic. They were considered scientific law, the foundation of medicine and metallurgy alike. A doctor might prescribe a tincture of gold for a heart condition, believing he was administering the very essence of the sun's life-giving power. Agrippa, you observe, has taken this a step further. This silver wasn't just purchased from a smith. You can almost sense its history. It was likely charged under the light of a full moon, perhaps for several consecutive nights, a process that supposedly purified it and imbued it with lunar energy. It's a bit like leaving your phone on its wireless charger overnight, except this charger is a celestial body 238,900 miles away. Some of the more esoteric alchemical texts of the time, the kind of weird facts that don't make it into standard history books, describe even stranger methods for preparing materials. Some alchemists would bury their metals in consecrated ground during specific planetary alignments, or expose them to moonlight that had been filtered through a specific concoction of herbs and crystals, believing this would fine-tune the vibrations of the material. Agrippa, with his exhaustive knowledge, would have known all these techniques. This small disc of silver is, in its own way, a perfectly prepared canvas. He picks up a fine-tipped burin, a sharp steel engraving tool. The real magic is about to begin. The power of the amulet will not come from the silver alone, but from the symbols he is about to inscribe upon it. This is where his genius for synthesis comes into play. You watch as his hand, steady and sure, begins to cut into the soft metal. He doesn't carve pictures of moons and stars in a literal sense. That would be child's play. He is carving the ideas behind them. You see him etch the celestial square of the moon, a 9 by 9 grid of numbers known as a magic square, where every row, column, and diagonal adds up to the same sum 369. Each number corresponds to a specific planet or spirit, and the entire grid is a mathematical representation of the moon's divine order. He then adds the sigil of the Archangel Gabriel, the ruler of the moon's sphere, and the names of the lunar intelligences, spirits like Mala Bitarshishim, Ve and Ruashoth Shechalim. It sounds like gibberish to us, a password you'd immediately forget. But to Agrippa, these are the names of cosmic forces, the phone numbers for the celestial switchboard. He works with intense concentration, his breath held. The symbols he carves are a complex blend of sources. There are astrological signs, Hebrew letters from the Kabbalah, and geometric forms from Pythagorean philosophy. This is the heart of his occult philosophy, the belief that these different systems were all just different languages, describing the same fundamental reality. Historians still debate the precise meaning and origin of some of the symbols Agrippa used in his works. He seems to have created a personal syncretic system, blending established traditions in ways that were intentionally obscure, perhaps to protect the knowledge from the unworthy, or more pragmatically, to protect himself from the Inquisition. The symbols on this very amulet are a puzzle, a code that only he, and the forces he believed he was commanding, could fully understand. As you watch him work, the atmosphere in the room seems to change. The air grows thick and heavy, and the flame of the candle sputters as if a sudden draft has swept through the sealed chamber. The poodle, monsieur, lifts its head and lets out a low, soft whine, its eyes fixed on the silver disc. Is it the power of suggestion, the late hour, the hypnotic focus of the man? Or is something actually happening? Is this piece of engraved metal beginning to resonate with the unseen forces it was designed to attract? Agrippa himself seems to feel it. A thin sheen of sweat is on his brow, but a look of triumph is dawning in his eyes. He is not just making a piece of jewelry. He is forging a key to unlock knowledge, to command influence, to see beyond the veil of the material world. He is pouring all of his ambition, all of his intellect, and all of his will into this one small object. The silver gleams, the freshly carved lines sharp and black against the lunar glow. The amulet is almost complete, and as the final symbol is etched, you feel a subtle shift, a quiet hum in the fabric of reality, as if a great machine has just been switched on. The amulet is finished. It lies on the black silk, a small circle of silver that seems impossibly heavy with the weight of the knowledge carved into its surface. You see Agrippa hold it up to the candlelight, his expression one of awe and exhaustion, like a man who has just wrestled an angel and won. He has done it. He has created his magnum opus in miniature, a pocket-sized engine of the cosmos. And at first, it seems to work brilliantly. The amulet, worn discreetly on a chain beneath his scholar's robes, becomes his constant companion. And with it, his fortunes begin to rise. You follow him as he travels through the courts of Europe. Suddenly, his words carry a new weight. When he speaks, powerful people listen. When he argues a point of law, his logic is unassailable. When he offers a medical diagnosis, it proves miraculously correct. His fame, which was already considerable, explodes. He is appointed as the personal physician and archivist to Margaret of Austria, the regent of the Netherlands, one of the most powerful women in Europe. This is a position of immense prestige and influence. He is given a generous salary, a beautiful home, and access to one of the finest libraries on the continent. It's the 16th century equivalent of landing a dream job at Google, complete with stock options and a gourmet cafeteria. He is at the absolute pinnacle of his career. His rivals are silenced, his detractors fall silent, and his patrons shower him with favor. You see him in the court, a confident, charismatic figure, the silver amulet hidden beneath his doublet. Is it the amulet's power, or is it simply the confidence it gives him? Perhaps the greatest magic of all is self-belief. The amulet acts as a psychological anchor, a constant reminder of his own genius and his connection to a higher purpose. When you believe you have the universe on your side, you tend to stand up a little straighter and speak a little more clearly. People respond to that. But as you watch, you begin to notice a subtle change in him. The restless fire in his eyes now has a manic edge. He becomes more arrogant, less willing to suffer fools. And in the politically treacherous world of a royal court, everyone is a potential fool or a rival. He makes enemies as easily as he makes disciples. His success is so profound, so seemingly effortless, that it breeds suspicion and jealousy. They whisper about him in the corridors, glancing at him with a mixture of fear and envy. The same success that the amulet brought him begins to paint a target on his back. The historical fact is that court life in the Renaissance was a viper's pit. Favor was fleeting, and a single misstep could lead to ruin. Remember the crocodile dung sunscreen we talked about in our episode on ancient Egypt? The political maneuvering here is just as messy and far more dangerous. Agrippa, emboldened by his success, becomes careless. He engages in a public dispute over the piety of Margaret of Austria's own mother, a deeply unwise move. He publishes new works that are even more challenging to the religious orthodoxy, openly mocking the conservative theologians of the day. He seems to believe he is untouchable. And this is the amulet's first cruel lesson. Power corrupts, and supernatural power corrupts supernaturally. He has the key to the universe, but he's forgotten how to deal with the petty squabbles of humanity. It's like having a supercar, but getting endless parking tickets. The fall, when it comes, is swift. His enemies, emboldened by his arrogance, unite against him. The Sorbonne in Paris officially condemns his writings as heretical. His patron, Margaret of Austria, dies, and his protection vanishes overnight. Suddenly, he is adrift. His salary is cut off, his creditors close in, and the church begins to sharpen its knives. He is forced to flee, becoming a wanderer once more. But this time, he is not a celebrated scholar on a grand tour. He is a hunted man. The amulet, once a source of power and prestige, now seems to be a magnet for misfortune. Every door that was once open is now slammed in his face. Every friend who once praised him now turns their back. You witness his final years, a slow, painful decline. He is imprisoned for debt. His wife dies. He is hounded from city to city by the Inquisition. The brilliant mind that sought to grasp the secrets of the cosmos is now consumed with the mundane, desperate struggle for survival. He dies in Grenoble, France, in 1535, alone and impoverished. Legend a weird, unverified tidbit says that on his deathbed, he renounced his magical arts, removed the collar from his poodle, Monsieur, and said, "Get thee hence, thou wretched beast, which hast utterly undone me." The dog then supposedly ran off and leaped into a river, never to be seen again. Historians still debate the actual cause of Agrippa's death and the circumstances surrounding it, but the legend is more potent. He died in exile, a lonely, broken man. The amulet, the magnificent key he had forged, had unlocked the door to his own renown, but it had led him straight into a prison of his own making. The price for his ambition, it seemed, was everything. With Agrippa's lonely death in a cold, unfamiliar room, the amulet's story should have ended. It should have been a footnote in the biography of a brilliant but tragic figure, a curious artifact lost to time, but it wasn't. An object's story is only partly written by its creator. The rest is written by those who come after. And in the vacuum left by Agrippa's demise, whispers began to fill the void. The story of his incredible rise and devastating fall needed an explanation. And the human mind, then as now, loves a simple, dramatic narrative. It wasn't his arrogance. It wasn't the shifting political tides or the jealousy of his rivals. It was the amulet. You are now a silent observer in the taverns and marketplaces of Europe, listening to the gossip as it morphs and grows. The story spreads like a contagion. The powerful charm that Agrippa had created to bring knowledge and influence was subtly reframed. It was no longer a tool of divine magic, but an object of dark sorcery. The whispers say that Agrippa didn't just invoke angels and intelligences. He made a pact with a demon. The amulet wasn't a key. It was a contract, and the price had been his soul and his happiness. The story becomes a cautionary tale, a piece of religious propaganda whispered from pulpits and lecture halls. See what happens to those who meddle with forbidden knowledge? See the fate of the arrogant scholar who thought he could command the heavens? It's a fascinating process to witness, this birth of a legend. Facts become malleable, details are embellished, and a narrative takes shape. The amulet, which had been a symbol of Agrippa's ambition, is now transformed into the very instrument of his downfall. The whispers turn his powerful charm into a legendary object of misfortune. It is no longer Agrippa's amulet. It is the cursed amulet of Agrippa. The new name sticks because it's a better story. It's more thrilling, more terrifying, and it carries a neat moral lesson. It's the 16th century version of a viral urban legend, spreading from person to person, each telling adding a new layer of dread. One person swears they heard it brought plague to a town Agrippa visited. Another claims it could cause crops to fail with a single glance. A third insists that just touching it would lead to a lifetime of bad luck. The object itself, wherever it was now radioactive with narrative power. One of the interesting historical facts about this period is the sheer power of reputation. In an age without mass media, a person's or an object's reputation was built entirely on word of mouth, letters, and pamphlets. A good reputation was a form of currency, and a bad one was a death sentence. The amulet's reputation was now thoroughly, perhaps irrevocably, stained. It had become a scapegoat for a complex and messy life story. This is something we still do today. We love to blame inanimate objects for our own failings. We curse the computer that crashes, the car that breaks down, the slot machine that doesn't pay out, as if they have a malicious will of their own. It's easier than admitting a lack of maintenance, bad driving, or the simple reality of statistical probability. Now, for a weird little tidbit from the era. At the same time, the amulet's curse was being born. A popular belief held that you could cure a toothache by driving a nail into an oak tree while reciting a specific charm. If the amulet represented magic gone wrong, these small folk traditions represented the everyday, safe magic people relied on. It shows the complex relationship people had with the supernatural, a deep fear of its dark potential, but also a reliance on its perceived benefits for life's minor miseries. The cursed amulet becomes the don't, while the nail in the tree is the do. The physical object, the small silver disc, has vanished from the historical record in the chaos following Agrippa's death. Was it buried with him? Was it stolen by a creditor? Was it taken by an agent of the church to be destroyed or hidden away? No one knows for sure. Historians still debate what happened to Agrippa's personal effects immediately following his death in Grenoble. The lack of a clear chain of custody is the fertile ground in which the cursed legend could grow. Because the amulet is missing, it can be anything anyone wants it to be. It is a ghost haunting the imagination of Europe. Its absence makes it even more powerful. An object you can see and hold can be studied, analyzed, and perhaps demystified. An object that is only a story can never be disproven. It exists purely in the realm of belief, where it is untouchable and infinitely potent. You feel the collective imagination of a continent crystallizing around this one lost object, imbuing it with a dark energy born of fear, gossip, and the timeless human love for a tragic story. The stage is now set for its reappearance. The curse has been born, and it is hungry for its next victim. All it needs is for someone foolish enough, or desperate enough, to find it. Decades pass, The name Agrippa is now a more cautionary tale than historical figure, and the story of his cursed amulet has become a piece of grim folklore told by firesides and in the shadowed corners of university libraries. The amulet itself remains lost, a ghost in the narrative. But ghosts have a way of reappearing. Our story now jumps forward to the late 16th century, to the glittering, treacherous world of the French royal court under the Valois kings. This is a place of opulence, intrigue, and sudden violence. The air is thick with expensive perfumes that barely mask the scent of paranoia. And it is here that the amulet, after nearly half a century in obscurity, resurfaces. You find yourself in a lavishly decorated chamber in the Louvre Palace. The walls are draped in heavy velvet tapestries depicting heroic hunts and mythological scenes. A man is admiring his latest acquisition. He is Charles de Guise, the Cardinal of Lorraine. He is one of the most powerful men in France, second only to the king himself. He is fabulously wealthy, endlessly ambitious, and a ruthless political operator. He is a collector of rare and beautiful things, classical statues, illuminated manuscripts, and most especially, objects of power. And now, he has acquired the prize of a lifetime. An agent in Grenoble, after years of searching, has located and purchased it for an exorbitant sum. The legendary amulet of Agrippa. You see it lying on a piece of red velvet. It looks unchanged. The silver still has its strange lunar glow. The symbols are still sharp and deeply etched. The cardinal picks it up, a look of smug triumph on his face. He is not a superstitious man, not in the way a common peasant is. He is an educated, sophisticated prince of the church. He dismisses the stories of a curse as foolish peasant gossip, propaganda spread by his family's enemies and the ignorant. What he sees is not a cursed object, but a tool. He sees an artifact created by one of the greatest minds of the previous generation, a talisman of immense occult power that in the right hands, his hands, could be used to further his own ambitions. He believes he is smarter, stronger, and more pious than Agrippa. He believes he can master the amulet where Agrippa failed. It's the classic thinking of every person who has ever thought they could control something dangerous. It's different from me. The historical fact is that the wars of religion were tearing France apart during this period. The Catholic Guise family led the charge against the Protestant Huguenots, and the cardinal was a central figure in this bloody conflict. Power was everything, and he was willing to use any weapon at his disposal, be it armies, assassins, or occult artifacts. He slips the amulet's chain over his head, tucking the silver disc beneath his magnificent crimson robes. He feels a jolt of cold, a surge of what he interprets as power. For a few months, it seems to work. A political plot against him is mysteriously exposed. A rival at court suffers a sudden debilitating illness. A key military decision goes his way. He is ascendant, his influence over the young king seemingly absolute. He feels invincible, protected by the dark star of Agrippa's genius. But the amulet, if it has a will, is a patient thing. It gives with one hand and takes with the other. The cardinal's successes make him overconfident. He pushes his agenda too, aggressively, alienating powerful nobles, and even the Queen Mother, Catherine de' Medici, a woman you do not want as an enemy. Remember our discussions about courtly intrigue? Catherine de' Medici wrote the textbook. She even had her own stable of court astrologers, and was no stranger to the occult arts herself. A weird little fact: Catherine had a supposed flying throne that her astrologer, Cosimo Ruggieri, allegedly used for scrying and prophecy. She was not someone to be trifled with, magically or politically. The cardinal's swift rise creates a powerful backlash. His enemies, who were once divided, are now united by their shared fear of his unchecked ambition. Historians still debate whether the subsequent conspiracy of Amboise, a plot by Huguenots to kidnap the king and usurp the Guises' power, was a direct result of the cardinal's aggressive tactics or an inevitability of the religious wars. But in the narrative of the curse, the connection is clear. The amulet amplified the cardinal's ambition, and that ambition became a beacon for disaster. The plot is discovered, and the Guise family responds with brutal force, executing over 1,000 people. The massacre turns public opinion against them. The cardinal, once a respected if feared leader, is now seen as a bloody tyrant. His influence plummets. He is blamed for the escalating violence and the instability of the kingdom. In a stunningly swift and brutal fall from grace, the man who was once the power behind the throne finds himself marginalized, distrusted, and hated. He has flown too close to the sun, and his wings, which he thought were made of silver, have melted. He dies a few years later, his family's power shattered, his grand ambitions in ruins. The amulet had given him a brief, intoxicating taste of ultimate power, and then presented him with the bill. And as always, the bill was ruin. After his death, the amulet once again vanishes, looted from his private collection in the chaos that followed. The amulet, now twice cursed in the popular imagination, slips back into the shadows. Its reputation is darker than ever. It is no longer just a bringer of personal misfortune. It is an agent of political chaos, a catalyst for bloodshed. After the fall of the Cardinal de Guise, the silver disc disappears from the historical record for another generation or so. It likely passed through the hands of soldiers, looters, and minor merchants, its true identity unknown, a strange silver pendant with odd carvings. Its journey is a blank page until it washes up, as so many strange things do, on the shores of England. You find yourself in London in the early 17th century. The city is a chaotic, thriving, and filthy metropolis. The air smells of coal smoke, unwashed humanity, and the nearby Thames River. The court of King James I is the center of this world, a place of high-stakes political theater, just as treacherous as the French court you just left, but with worse weather and, arguably, better playwrights. It is here we meet our next protagonist, or perhaps our next victim. His name is Robert Carr, a handsome but relatively minor Scottish courtier. He has one great asset. He has caught the eye of the king. King James I, a historical fact you may know, had a well-documented preference for handsome young male favorites, upon whom he would lavish titles, wealth, and power. Robert Carr becomes one of the most prominent of these. He is charming, athletic, and utterly devoted to the king, rising with dizzying speed from a minor page to become the Earl of Somerset, one of the most powerful men in the kingdom. But Carr has a problem. He is not particularly bright. His spectacular rise is built on the king's affection, not on his own political skill or intellect. He is, to put it bluntly, an imposter in the halls of power, and he knows it. He lives in constant fear that his lack of substance will be exposed, that the king's favor will shift to a new, more brilliant favorite. He is desperate for an edge, for something to solidify his position and give him the gravitas he so clearly lacks. And so he turns to the occult. This was not unusual. The court of James I was obsessed with the supernatural, a fascination inherited from the king himself, who famously wrote a treatise on demonology, Daimonology. It's a weird fact that James I was so convinced of the reality of witchcraft that he personally presided over the North Berwick witch trials, one of the most brutal witch hunts in Scottish history. So, for Carr to seek out occult solutions was simply to speak the language of the court. He seeks the counsel of astrologers and cunning men, and one of them, a shadowy figure who claims to have traveled extensively on the continent, presents him with a unique opportunity, an artifact of incredible power, once owned by the great Agrippa and a French cardinal. An amulet that could grant influence and secure favor. The cursed amulet of Agrippa. You see Carr in his opulent London apartments, the amulet in his hand. He has heard the stories of the curse, of course, but like the cardinal before him, he is a master of self-deception. The curse, he reasons, only affects those who use the amulet for evil. He, on the other hand, will use it simply to maintain the king's love and to serve the realm. A noble purpose. Besides, what choice does he have? His rivals are circling, and his own inadequacies are a constant, gnawing source of anxiety. He needs this. It's the ultimate confidence booster, a magical substitute for genuine talent. He begins to wear it, hidden against his skin, and once again, it seems to work. His influence over the king deepens. He seems to anticipate the king's moods, to say the perfect thing at the perfect time. He navigates a complex political negotiation. With surprising skill, his enemies at court are stymied. He feels brilliant, powerful, secure for the first time in his life. He even manages to win the hand of the beautiful, but notoriously amoral, Frances Howard, after her previous marriage is controversially handled. He has it all: power, wealth, love. He is at the very apex of the Jacobean court. Historians still debate the extent of Carr's actual political acumen during this period. Was he genuinely growing into his role, guided by his more intelligent wife and allies? Or was his success purely a product of the king's infatuation? A bubble waiting to burst? From your vantage point, you can see the cold glint of silver beneath his fine linen shirt, and you have your own suspicions. The amulet is not bestowing wisdom. It is merely amplifying his ambition and papering over his flaws, making the eventual fall all the more certain. He is a man walking on a tightrope, and the amulet is a weight in his pocket, slowly, imperceptibly, pulling him off balance. Robert Carr, the Earl of Somerset, is riding high. With the king's unwavering favor and the amulet's secret reassurance, he feels untouchable. He and his ambitious wife, Frances, are the ultimate power couple of the Jacobean court, their every move watched and emulated. But the higher you climb, the further you have to fall. And the amulet, it seems, has a flair for dramatic irony. The very thing Carr used it to achieve his marriage to Frances, Howard will become the instrument of his destruction. The story is a sordid and famous one, a true crime drama from the 17th century. To secure her annulment from her first husband, so she could marry Carr, Frances had enlisted the help of various occult practitioners. But there was one man who stood in the way of Carr's ambitions: Sir Thomas Overbury. Overbury was Carr's close friend and mentor, the brains behind Carr's initial rise. A key historical fact is that Overbury vehemently opposed Carr's relationship with Frances Howard, knowing her to be ruthless and fearing her influence. He knew too many of the couple's secrets. To get him out of the way, Carr and Frances conspired to have him imprisoned in the Tower of London on trumped-up charges. It was meant to be a temporary solution, just to silence him until after the wedding. But Overbury didn't just stay silent in the tower. He died, suddenly and mysteriously. At the time, it was officially ruled as death by natural causes, and the matter was seemingly closed. Carr and Frances got their wish. They were married in a lavish ceremony, the talk of the kingdom. Carr, with the amulet cool against his chest, must have felt he had successfully navigated the crisis. He had love, he had power, and his one significant obstacle had been permanently removed. This, he must have thought, was the amulet working its magic, clearing his path to glory. He couldn't have been more wrong. You are a silent witness to the slow unraveling that follows. Whispers, much like the ones that first forged the amulet's curse, begin to circulate. Rumors that Overbury's death was not natural. An apothecary's apprentice, riddled with guilt, confesses that he had been paid to deliver a poisoned tart to the prisoner's cell. The story is so sensational, so shocking, that it cannot be contained. A full-blown investigation is launched, and bit by bit, the entire sordid conspiracy comes to light. It was a slow, methodical poisoning, orchestrated by Francis Howard with, at the very least, Carr's tacit approval. They hadn't just imprisoned Overbury. They had murdered him. It's a weird Gothic detail of the case that the poisons used were said to be things like white arsenic, aqua fortis, and powder of diamonds, all administered in tarts and jellies. The trial was a national sensation, the 17th century equivalent of the O.J. Simpson trial, laying bare the moral corruption at the heart of the glamorous court. Carr's meteoric rise ends in a spectacular crash. He and his wife are arrested and put on trial for murder. The man who was the king's favorite is now a common criminal, his name synonymous with scandal and treason. The king, heartbroken and politically embarrassed, has no choice but to abandon him. The trial is a humiliation. Carr, stripped of his titles and finery, stands accused before his peers. The evidence is overwhelming. He is found guilty. The sentence is death. You can almost feel the cold weight of the amulet under his prison rags, no longer a source of confidence, but a dead weight of despair. Had it not been for the amulet, would he have had the blind ambition to pursue Francis Howard so recklessly? Would he have felt secure enough to conspire against his own friend? Historians still debate Carr's level of direct involvement in the murder plot. Was he an active participant? Or was he a weak-willed man manipulated by his more ruthless wife? The curse narrative, however, offers a simpler, more compelling answer. The amulet drove him to it, inflating his ego to the point where he believed he could get away with anything. In the end, the king's lingering affection saves Carr and his wife from the executioner's axe. Their death sentences are commuted, but they are condemned to live out their days imprisoned in the Tower of London, the very place their victim had died. They enter the tower's cold embrace, their love turning to bitter hatred in the cramped, lonely confines of their cells. Robert Carr, the man who wanted to secure his place in the sun, ends his life in a cold, dark stone room, his name forever disgraced. The amulet's dark reputation is now not just cemented. It is inscribed in the annals of English history. It doesn't just bring ruin, it brings infamy. And as Carr is stripped of his possessions before being led to his cell, the small silver disc is taken from him, its journey about to take another turn, its legend now heavier and darker than ever before. Following the spectacular implosion of Robert Carr, the amulet once again sinks from view, but this time, the world around it is changing. The 17th century gives way to the 18th, and a new way of thinking is taking hold across Europe. We call it the Enlightenment or the Age of Reason. It is an era that champions logic, scientific inquiry, and skepticism over superstition, faith, and tradition. The whispered magic of Agrippa's time, the courtly intrigues fueled by occult belief, now seem faintly ridiculous, relics of a darker, more ignorant past. You find yourself drifting through a different kind of landscape. The air no longer hums with unseen forces. It is a space to be measured, categorized, and understood. You're in the coffee houses of London, the salons of Paris, where men in powdered wigs debate the rights of man, the nature of government, and the laws of physics. They speak of Newton, Locke, and Voltaire. In this new intellectual climate, a story about a cursed amulet that ruins the lives of its owners is met not with a shudder of fear, but with a condescending smile and a rational explanation. The fall of the Cardinal de Guise, a predictable outcome of political overreach during the wars of religion. The ruin of Robert Carr, a tawdry tale of lust, murder, and stupidity. The amulet is irrelevant, a narrative crutch for the superstitious. A classic example of the post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy. After this, therefore because of this. The curse is dismissed as mere folklore. It's a quaint, spooky story, but no educated person could possibly believe it to be real. The amulet, if it even still exists, is reclassified. It's no longer an object of power or peril. It is simply an artifact, a curio, a piece of historical memorabilia with a colorful if tragic provenance. It's a bit like how we view old medical devices today. That 19th century bloodletting kit isn't a terrifying medical tool. It's a quirky, slightly macabre antique you might see in a museum display, a reminder of how far we've come. That's what the amulet has become. Its physical journey during this time reflects its diminished status. It's no longer sought by the powerful and ambitious. It likely passes through the hands of antiquarians and minor collectors, people more interested in its history than its supposed power. You might see it in a dusty London shop, nestled in a tray alongside Roman coins, a shard of pottery, and a tarnished silver snuff box. The shopkeeper might recount its bloody history with a theatrical flair to a potential customer, but it's just a sales pitch, a way to add a few shillings to the price. The customer, a gentleman of reason, would purchase it not because he believes in the curse, but because he doesn't. Owning it, it is a sign of his own enlightenment, a quiet mockery of the foolish beliefs of his ancestors. A key historical fact of the Enlightenment is the rise of encyclopedias and collections. People like Denis Diderot in France sought to compile all human knowledge, while wealthy individuals created cabinets of curiosities, rooms filled with natural wonders and historical artifacts from around the world. These collections were a microcosm of the world, ordered and categorized by human reason. The amulet would have been a perfect addition to such a cabinet. It would be placed in a drawer with a small, neatly written label, Silver Talisman, FMRLY. Adder to H.C. Agrippa, 16th C note, subject of considerable folklore. Its magic has been neutralized by a card catalog. A weird, little-known fact from this period is the brief but intense convulsionaires craze in a Paris cemetery, where religious pilgrims would go into violent, ecstatic fits at the tomb of a dead certain deacon, believing it to be a source of miraculous healing. It's a stark reminder that even in the heart of the Age of Reason, pockets of fervent, mystical belief continued to thrive, often in defiance of the rationalist elite. But for the most part, the intellectual tide was against the supernatural. The world was being demystified, one discovery at a time. Historians still debate how deeply the Enlightenment's rationalism penetrated the lower classes of society. While the educated elite were discussing Newton, was the average farmer still quietly nailing a horseshoe over his door? Almost certainly. But the people who owned and traded an object like the amulet were part of that elite, and for them, the curse was dead. And so, the amulet enters a long, quiet slumber. It is hidden away, perhaps in the drawer of a cabinet in an English country house, or packed in a crate and forgotten in a dusty attic. The world moves on. Revolutions rise and fall. Empires are built and lost. The Industrial Revolution begins to choke the skies with smoke, and the hum of machinery replaces the quiet of the pre-electric age. The amulet sleeps through it all, its story fading, its power dormant, its curse forgotten by a world that believed it had outgrown such things. It lies in the dark, a small, cold disk of silver, waiting for a time when the world would be ready to believe in mystery again. The Age of Reason was a bright, clear day, but a night of romanticism and Gothic revival was just over the horizon. And in that darkness, old ghosts would learn to walk again. The long, rational slumber of the 18th century eventually gives way to the passions and shadows of the 19th. The pendulum of human interest swings back from pure logic toward romanticism, emotion, and a renewed fascination with the past especially. Its darker, more mysterious corners. The Gothic revival in architecture and literature brings back castles, ghosts, and ancient curses as fashionable subjects. Suddenly, the old stories are not just quaint folklore. They are thrilling, a delicious shiver of fear in an age of steam engines and scientific progress. And it is in this new climate that the amulet is rediscovered. You find yourself in Victorian London, a city of stark contrasts. Immense wealth and grinding poverty exist side by side. The air is a thick soup of coal fog and industrial smog that blurs the edges of reality and makes every gas lamp an isolated beacon in a murky sea. It is the perfect setting for a ghost story, and the perfect time for our next collector to enter the stage. His name is Lord Alistair Blackwood, an eccentric nobleman and antiquarian. He is a man with too much money and too much time on his hands, a classic Victorian gentleman scholar. He has a sprawling, cluttered library in his London townhouse, a dusty sanctuary filled with medieval armor, taxidermied animals, and of course, books. Thousands of them. Blackwood is not like the Enlightenment collector who bought the amulet as a rationalist's trophy. He is a product of his time, a romantic. He is fascinated by the occult, by secret societies, by the very mysteries his grandfathers had dismissed. He reads the new Gothic novels, attends seances, and corresponds with members of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. He is not just a collector of artifacts. He is a collector of stories, especially dark ones. One day, while browsing a dusty estate sale of a family whose fortunes had dwindled, he stumbles upon it. Tucked away in a small, mislabeled box of silver trinkets is a tarnished disc with strange engravings. As an expert in historical symbols, Blackwood recognizes them immediately. The celestial square of the moon, the sigils from Agrippa's De Occulta Philosophia. He can barely contain his excitement. He buys it for a pittance. Back in his library, he cleans the tarnish from the silver. As the strange lunar glow returns, he feels he has found the holy grail of occult artifacts. He researches its provenance, tracing its path from Robert Carr's trial back through the Cardinal de Guise, all the way to Agrippa himself. He uncovers the stories of ruin, the whispers of the curse. But instead of being deterred, he is captivated. A curse is the most valuable part of its story. It's not a bug, it's a feature. He doesn't believe he will fall victim to it. Like all the others, he sees himself as the exception. He is not a practitioner seeking power, merely a scholar, an observer. He believes he is immune. He is wrong. The amulet becomes his obsession. You watch as his life begins to revolve around it. He spends less time with his family and friends, and more time in his library, poring over ancient texts, trying to decipher the amulet's every symbol. His study, once a gentleman's hobby, becomes a consuming mania. He writes endless pages of notes, his handwriting growing more erratic. He talks to the amulet, whispering questions to it in the dead of night. His health begins to fail. He grows, pale and thin, with dark circles under his eyes, as if the amulet is slowly draining the life from him. A key historical fact of the Victorian era was a widespread fascination with spiritualism and communication with the dead. Seances, mediumship, and table turning were incredibly popular, even among the educated upper classes. Blackwood's obsession was an extreme version of a very common cultural trend. Now for a weird tidbit. The Victorians also had a strange fad for mummy unwrapping parties, where a wealthy host would purchase an ancient Egyptian mummy and unroll its bandages before a crowd of fascinated guests. It speaks to their unique blend of scientific curiosity and morbid entertainment, a combination that perfectly describes Lord Blackwood's relationship with the amulet. He is unwrapping a centuries-old curse, and he is thrilled by what he might find inside. His friends and family grow concerned. They see a man consumed, wasting away. They beg him to get rid of the dreadful thing, but he refuses. He sees their concern as ignorance, an inability to appreciate the historical and mystical significance of his prize. Historians still debate the nature of Blackwood's decline. Was it a genuine supernatural influence, or was it a case of what modern psychology might call ideomotor effect, or simply a descent into monomania, where his belief in the curse became a self-fulfilling prophecy? He believed the amulet was draining him, so he stopped eating and sleeping properly, and his health naturally deteriorated. From your perspective, you see the truth is a blend. The amulet is a mirror, and Blackwood is staring into it so intently that he is forgetting to live in the world outside. The curse is working not through overt paranormal acts, but by hijacking his own mind. His obsession is the true curse, and the amulet is merely its catalyst, its beautiful silver focal point. Lord Blackwood's obsession deepens, pulling him further and further away from the world of the living. His library is no longer just a room in his house. It has become his entire world, a dusty, book-lined prison of his own making. The amulet is its heart, resting on a velvet cushion on his desk, the centerpiece of his self-imposed exile. You observe him in the late hours, the only light in the vast London townhouse coming from the single gas lamp on his desk. He has become a ghost in his own home, a pale, wraith-like figure hunched over his research, muttering to himself. The air in the library is stale, thick with the scent of old paper and decay, and something else. A palpable sense of dread. The final chapter of Blackwood's story is shrouded in mystery and speculation, which, of course, only adds to the amulet's legend. The official account is mundane, but the whispers tell a different story. One cold autumn night, the Blackwood residence is shaken by screams and the smell of smoke. The servants, waking in a panic, find the west wing of the house ablaze. The fire is centered on one room, the library. Flames pour from the windows, consuming the priceless collection of books and artifacts within. The fire brigade arrives, but the blaze is too intense. The library is a raging inferno, a funeral pyre for a lifetime of obsessive collecting. Lord Blackwood's body is never found. The official explanation is that he was tragically consumed by the fire, his remains lost among the ashes of his beloved books. It's a sad but straightforward end to the story. But the servants who were first on the scene tell a different tale, one that is whispered in pubs and kitchens for years to come. They say that when they broke down the library door, they saw a terrifying sight. For a fleeting moment, before the smoke and flames drove them back, they saw Lord Blackwood standing in the center of the room, seemingly unharmed, with a look of ecstatic terror on his face. They claimed the fire was not burning him, but swirling around him as if held at bay by an invisible force. And in the heart of the vortex, something gleamed with a cool silver light. It's a sensational, unbelievable account, the kind that authorities would quickly dismiss as hysteria. A key historical fact is that house fires were devastatingly common in Victorian London. Gaslighting, open hearths, and flammable building. Materials made fire a constant and terrifying threat. A library filled with dry paper and wood would go up like a tinderbox. So, a fire itself is not unusual. What is unusual is what happens next. After the fire is extinguished and the smoldering ruins have cooled, investigators begin to sift through the wreckage. The room is a scene of total devastation. Everything is gone. Thousands of books are now just charred flakes of ash. Wooden shelves, a heavy oak desk, leather chairs, all reduced to charcoal. The heat was so intense, it warped steel and melted glass. And in the very center of this wasteland of black ash and debris, on the spot where Blackwood's desk once stood, they find one object. It is lying on the charred floorboards, untouched. The cursed amulet of Agrippa. It is not even tarnished. The silver is as bright and clean as the day it was forged, its strange lunar glow seeming to mock the surrounding destruction. This is the weird, inexplicable fact that cements this chapter of the legend. How could a small silver disc survive a blaze that vaporized everything around it? Investigators have no logical explanation. It is simply recorded as a strange anomaly. For believers in the curse, the explanation is obvious. The amulet protects itself. It is indestructible, an eternal vessel for its own misfortune. It sacrificed its owner and his entire collection to cleanse itself, to be ready for its next journey. Historians still debate the cause of the fire. Was it an accident, a gas lamp knocked over by a tired, unsteady man? Was it arson, set by Blackwood himself in a final desperate act of madness? Or was it something else, something that defies rational explanation? The lack of a body only adds to the mystery. Did he truly perish, or did he, as some of the more fanciful occultists of the time claimed, get consumed by a magical force he had unwittingly summoned? The amulet, pristine and silent, offers no answers. It is recovered. From the ashes, a lone survivor of the Inferno, the Blackwood family, horrified by the object and its history, wants nothing to do with it. They quietly sell it to a dealer who specializes in items of a peculiar nature, eager to purge the last remnant of Alistair Blackwood's disastrous obsession from their lives. The amulet has burned another life to the ground, and now it is ready to cross the ocean. The dawn of the 20th century arrives, and with it, a new world power is coming into its own. America, a land of boundless ambition, industrial might, and new money. While Europe is freighted with the weight of its long, bloody history, America is focused on the future. It's the age of the robber barons, of men who build vast empires of steel, oil, and railroads. And these new titans of industry, having conquered the material world, begin to look for ways to legitimize their wealth and status. They do what the rich have always done. They start collecting art and antiquities from the old world, importing European history by the crate load. It is on this wave of new money and old world fascination that the amulet of Agrippa makes its voyage across the Atlantic. You are there as it sits in the velvet-lined case of a high-end New York City art dealer, a man who knows a good story sells better than good art. He has embellished its history, of course, adding a few extra ghosts and a bit more Gothic flair. For his American clients, the amulet is no longer just a cursed object. It is a piece of rare and tragic European nobility, a conversation piece of the highest order. And it catches the eye of exactly the right person. His name is Marcus Thorne. He is the archetypal American industrialist, a man who clawed his way up from nothing to build a colossal manufacturing empire. He is ruthless, brilliant, and deeply insecure about his humble origins. He has built a magnificent mansion on Fifth Avenue, a gaudy pseudo-castle designed to rival the homes of the Vanderbilts and the Astors. But he feels that all his money cannot buy him the one thing he truly craves, the legitimacy and class of old-world aristocracy. He collects things that he thinks will give him that pedigree. Old master paintings, medieval tapestries, and now, this, the amulet of Agrippa. You see him in the dealership, a bull of a man in a perfectly tailored suit, listening intently as the dealer spins the yarn of the amulet's history. He hears about Agrippa, the cardinal, the English earl, the eccentric lord. Thorne is not a superstitious man. He is a modern man of industry and logic. He doesn't believe in the curse for a second. He sees the amulet through a different lens. For him, it is the ultimate status symbol. It is an object that has been owned by powerful, important men for centuries. Owning it, he believes, places him in that lineage. It connects his new money to their old power. It's a bit like buying a certified pre-owned car from a celebrity. The association is the point. He buys it for an astronomical sum, outbidding a rival collector and relishing the victory. The amulet is taken to its new home in Thorne's Fifth Avenue mansion. It is placed in a custom-built, climate-controlled, bulletproof glass display case in his private study, spotlit like the crown jewels. It is the centerpiece of his collection, the object he shows to his most important guests. It's said to be cursed, he would say with a hearty laugh. But I've found that a man makes his own luck. A key historical fact of this Gilded Age is the sheer scale of this cultural acquisition. Men like J.P. Morgan and Henry Clay Frick bought entire European libraries and even dismantled parts of monasteries and castles to ship them to America. Thorne's purchase of the amulet is a perfect, if small-scale, example of this trend. Now for a weird tidbit from the era. At the same time these industrialists were buying up European culture, many of their wives were deeply involved in the Theosophical Society, a spiritualist movement that blended Eastern mysticism, philosophy, and occultism, believing in ancient masters and lost continents like Atlantis. So, while Marcus Thorne is laughing off the curse in his study, his wife might be in the parlor, earnestly discussing her past life on Lemuria. It's another one of those fascinating contradictions, where hard-nosed capitalism and mystical belief exist under the same roof. Thorne, however, remains a skeptic. He sees the amulet not as a magical tool, but as a testament to his own success. He has conquered the world of business, and now he has conquered history, possessing an object that a king's favorite and a powerful cardinal once held. Historians still debate the psychological motivations of these great industrialists. Were they driven purely by greed, or was there a deeper, more complex desire for immortality and a legacy that would outlive their mortal achievements? In Thorne, you see both. He wants to be remembered, to have his name spoken in the same breath as the great man of history. The amulet is his shortcut. He doesn't need its magic. He just needs its story. But the amulet has a story of its own, and it doesn't care whether its owner is a believer or a skeptic. The curse, if it exists, is not a matter of faith. It's a matter of time. And for Marcus Thorne, the clock has just started ticking. Marcus Thorne's empire, like the man himself, seems invincible. His factories churn out products, his rail lines crisscross the nation, and his fortune swells to unimaginable heights. The amulet sits in its glass case, a silent glittering testament to his power. He has everything a man of his time could want: wealth, influence, a beautiful family, and a future that seems as solid as the steel his factories produce. He has built an empire, but the amulet has a long history with empires. It seems to enjoy watching them crumble into sand. The first crack appears not in his business, but at home. You witness a subtle shift in the Thorne mansion. The opulent halls, once filled with the sounds of laughter and extravagant parties, grow quiet and cold. Thorne's son, his designated heir, a young man groomed to take over the family business, begins to act erratically. He falls in with a fast crowd, developing a scandalous reputation for gambling and drinking. Thorne, a man used to absolute control, cannot seem to rein him in. His lectures, threats, and bribes all fail. The son becomes a public embarrassment. His escapades splashed across the gossip columns. It's a personal tragedy, a deep wound to Thorne's pride. Then, the whispers of the curse, once a joke to Thorne, begin to have a new, chilling resonance. His wife, who had always been a steady presence, becomes frail and withdrawn, afflicted by a mysterious nervous condition that baffles the best doctor's money can buy. She spends her days in a darkened room, a shadow of her former self. The family. That was meant to be his dynasty, the living proof of his success, is starting to fall apart. He throws more money at the problems, but it's like trying to patch a collapsing dam with dollar bills. The trouble then spreads to his business empire, the very foundation of his identity. A series of inexplicable events begins to plague his companies. A key factory, his most profitable one, is destroyed by a fire that starts in a seemingly impossible way, a catastrophic boiler explosion that investigators can't explain. A crucial shipment of raw materials vanishes at sea, the ship lost without a trace in a sudden, unforecasted storm. One of his most trusted executives, a man who had been with him for decades, is caught in a massive embezzlement scheme, nearly bankrupting a major subsidiary. Each disaster is a body blow, and they come one after another, a relentless, percussive rhythm of failure. This is where the historical context becomes crucial. The early 20th century was a volatile economic time. The Panic of 1907, a key historical event, was a major financial crisis that wiped out fortunes overnight. Thorne's initial troubles can be seen as part of this larger economic instability. However, the sheer concentration and bizarre nature of his misfortunes set him apart. His rivals suffer, but Thorne's empire seems to be uniquely, almost maliciously, targeted. He makes a series of uncharacteristically bad business decisions, as if his famous intuition has completely deserted him. He invests heavily in a new technology that proves to be a fraud. He initiates a hostile takeover that backfires spectacularly, leaving him vulnerable and over-leveraged. You see him late at night in his study, the lone light in the cavernous mansion. He is no longer the confident titan of industry. He is a haunted, desperate man, staring at the glass case in the corner. The amulet inside seems to gleam with a brighter, colder light. He is no longer laughing about the curse. He finds himself wondering, is it possible? Could this object be the cause of his ruin? The thought is madness, a rejection of everything he has built his life upon. But as he looks at the wreckage of his family and his fortune, reason provides no comfort. It's a weird, ironic twist. Ultimate rationalist, the man of steel and logic, is being driven to superstitious fear by a chain of events he cannot explain. Historians still debate the reasons for the collapse of Thorne's empire. Was it a classic case of imperial overreach and a failure to adapt to changing market conditions? Or was he simply the victim of an astonishingly bad run of luck? The curse narrative provides the most elegant, if unbelievable, explanation. The amulet, once again, acted as a catalyst. It didn't cause the storm or the fire. It simply steered Thorne's ship directly into the path of every available disaster. It unraveled him from the inside out, shattering his family, then his confidence, and finally his fortune. His empire, which he thought was built on steel, was actually built on sand, and the tide was now going out. The final collapse of the Thorne dynasty is as swift as it is total. The series of personal and financial tragedies reaches its crescendo. Marcus Thorne, the man who once bestrode the American economy like a colossus, is broken. The stock market crash of 1929 delivers the final merciless blow, wiping out the last remnants of his fortune. The mansion on Fifth Avenue is sold to pay off creditors. The art collection is auctioned off piece by piece. The Thorne name, once a symbol of success, becomes a cautionary tale whispered on Wall Street. Thorne himself lives out his last few years in obscurity, a bitter, ruined man, dying of a heart attack in a modest rented apartment, a world away from the palace he had built. But what of the amulet? In the chaos of the bankruptcy auction, it simply disappears. This is the final act of its recorded history, and it's a fittingly mysterious one. One moment it's there, listed in the auction catalog as Lot 734, a silver pendant of continental origin with occult engravings, notable provenance. And the next, it's gone. There is no record of its sale. No one steps forward to claim they bought it. It wasn't stolen in a dramatic heist. The auction house records simply show a void. It vanished. It slipped through the cracks of history, as if it had simply decided its work with the Thorne family was done, and it was time to move on. You are there in the aftermath, a silent observer of the void it has left behind. The amulet has vanished into modern legend. Its disappearance is the masterstroke of its own myth. An object that can be tracked and studied can eventually be explained, but an object that disappears becomes infinitely more powerful. It can be anywhere, and therefore it is everywhere. Its story is no longer tethered to a physical object that must obey the laws of physics. It is now pure narrative, pure legend, free to grow and mutate in the collective imagination. The search for the cursed amulet of Agrippa becomes a kind of fringe hobby, a quest for occultists, conspiracy theorists, and treasure hunters. Every few years, a new theory about its whereabouts surfaces. One story claims it was acquired by the Nazis for their occult research division, the Aninid, and is now hidden in a secret bunker in Antarctica. A key historical fact is that the Nazis did indeed have an interest in occult artifacts, believing they could provide them with supernatural power. So this theory, while wild, has a sliver of historical plausibility. Another rumor suggests it was bought by a secretive Hollywood celebrity in the 1950s, who kept it until their own tragic early death. A weirder theory posits that it was taken by a secret society of Agrippa's descendants, who are its rightful guardians, keeping it safe from the world. Each of these stories adds another layer to the legend. The amulet becomes a Zelig-like figure in the background of 20th century history, a hidden influence, a secret cause for unexplained tragedies. Did it have a hand in the Kennedy curse? Was it in the pocket of a scientist on the Manhattan Project? The questions are unanswerable, which makes them all the more tantalizing. Historians, of course, dismiss all of this. For them, the amulet was likely purchased by a private collector who wished to remain anonymous, and it now sits in a bank vault or a private collection somewhere, its owner blissfully unaware of, or indifferent to, its dark legend. Historians still debate the most likely fate of the amulet after the Thorne auction, with most concluding it was simply lost or absorbed into a collection without proper documentation. But the legend is so much more compelling than the probable reality. So, after centuries of leaving a trail of ruined lives across Europe and America, the cursed amulet of Agrippa has achieved its ultimate form. It has become a ghost, a story, a whisper. It has returned to the state in which it was born, not as a physical object of silver, but as a powerful idea. An idea about ambition, fate, and the subtle, often cruel mechanics of misfortune. Its location is a complete mystery, which is the perfect ending, or perhaps the perfect pause in its story. Because as long as it is lost, it can always be found. And as long as there are people with ambition, greed, and a belief that they are the exception to the rule, the amulet will always have a potential new owner waiting in the wings. It sits in the dark, somewhere, waiting. And so, our journey ends where it began, in mystery. We have followed this small silver disc through 500 years of human history. We have watched it being born from the fierce intellect and ambition of a Renaissance genius. We have seen it pass through the hands of cardinals and courtiers, of lords and industrialists. We have witnessed the consistent pattern of ruin that followed in its wake, a trail of broken fortunes, shattered families, and disgraced names. From a lonely death in Grenoble to a society scandal in London, from a library fire in a foggy Victorian night to the collapse of a financial empire in the glittering city of New York, the amulet has been a constant, silent passenger to disaster. Which leaves us here in the quiet of the night with one final lingering question. A question that hangs in the air, as heavy and as real as the object itself. Was the amulet truly cursed? Was it a malevolent artifact, imbued by Agrippa with a dark power that actively sought to destroy those who possessed it? Did it have a will of its own? A thirst for misery? Or was it something else entirely? Was it merely a mirror? A beautifully crafted, highly polished mirror that did not cast spells, but simply reflected the fatal flaws of its owners back at them with blinding intensity. Not think about it. Each owner was a person of immense ambition. Agrippa, the cardinal, Carr, Blackwood Thorn. They were all reaching for something just beyond their grasp. They saw the amulet as a shortcut, a tool to achieve their desires. Perhaps the amulets. Only real magic was to give them just enough confidence, just enough of a push to make them overreach. It amplified their own greed, their own arrogance, their own obsession, until those qualities consumed them. It didn't create the flaw. It just fed it. In this reading, the curse is not supernatural, but psychological. The amulet is a catalyst for self-destruction. A key historical fact is that throughout history, humans have always been drawn to scapegoats, to simple explanations for complex failures. It is easier to blame a cursed object than to confront one's own poor judgment, arrogance, or the simple, chaotic randomness of life. There's a weird little bit of modern folklore that feels relevant. Here, the curse of the lottery, the well-documented phenomenon of lottery winners whose lives are ruined by their sudden wealth. They lose friends, their families fall apart, and they end up miserable or broke. Is the lottery ticket cursed? Or does the sudden influx of immense fortune simply act as a powerful catalyst, amplifying pre-existing problems and character flaws? The amulet could be the ultimate lottery ticket, and so we are left to wonder. Is the world governed by unseen forces, by curses and charms that can shape our destiny? Or is the human heart the most powerful and dangerous magical object of all? Historians will, of course, forever debate the true story of the amulet of Agrippa, sorting through facts and folklore, trying to separate the history from the hysteria. But perhaps they are missing the point. The power of the amulet lies not in its verifiable truth, but in its story. It is a story that has survived for half a millennium because it speaks to a deep and timeless truth about the human condition. Our ambition is both our greatest strength and our most fatal weakness. The line between reaching for the stars and flying too close to the sun is perilously thin. The amulet is still out there somewhere, or maybe it's not. Maybe it was melted down a century ago. Its silver used to make a set of spoons or a silver-plated teapot. But the story, the true essence of the amulet, is indestructible. It lingers, waiting for a quiet moment like this to be told again, a reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but to be pondered in the dark just before we drift off to sleep. The night has grown deep and quiet around you now. The story of the cursed silver disc fades, its sharp, metallic gleam softening into the gentle darkness of your room. The figures of Agrippa and the long line of the doomed who followed. Him recede, becoming just echoes in the vast corridors of the past. Let the weight of their ambition and the chill of their misfortune drift away, leaving behind only the calm and the quiet. The hum of the fan, if you have one on, becomes a gentle, soothing sound, a soft, mechanical lullaby washing away the last traces of the tale. There are no cursed objects here, only the comfort of your bed and the peaceful stillness of the approaching sleep. Your own breathing slows, becoming a soft, steady rhythm in and out. The last vestiges of the story dissolve like smoke, leaving your mind clear and calm, a quiet, empty space ready for rest. Let go of the day, let go of the story, and allow yourself to drift on that gentle tide, down into the soft, welcoming depths of a peaceful, dreamless sleep.